"Mamma would never like it, I am afraid," said Mary. "She would call our delicious gushes of air draughts, and think we should catch cold. Jemima would be on our side; but how long Mrs Denbigh is! I hope she was near enough to the post office when the rain came on." Ruth had gone to "the shop" in the little village, about half a mile distant, where all the letters were left till fetched. She only expected one, but that one was to tell her of Leonard. She, however, received two. The unexpected one was from Mr Bradshaw, and the news it contained was, if possible, a greater surprise than the letter itself. Mr Bradshaw informed her that he planned arriving by dinner time the following Saturday at Eagle's Crag; and more, that he intended bringing Mr Donne and one or two other gentlemen with him, to spend the Sunday there. The letter went on to give every possible direction regarding the household preparations. The dinner hour was fixed to be at 6; but, of course, Ruth and the girls would have dined long before. The professional cook would arrive the day before, laden with all the provisions that could not be obtained on the spot. Ruth was to engage a waiter from the inn, and this it was that detained her so long. While she sat in the little parlour, awaiting the coming of the landlady, she could not help wondering why Mr Bradshaw was bringing this strange gentleman to spend 2 days at Abermouth, and thus giving himself so much trouble and fuss of preparation. There were so many small reasons that went to make up the large one which had convinced Mr Bradshaw of the desirableness of this step, that it was not likely that Ruth should guess at one half of them. In the first place, Miss Benson, in the pride and fullness of her heart, had told Mrs Bradshaw what her brother had told her, how he meant to preach upon the Christian view of the duties involved in political rights; and as, of course, Mrs Bradshaw had told Mr Bradshaw, he began to dislike the idea of attending chapel on that Sunday at all, for he had an uncomfortable idea that by the Christian standard, that divine test of the true and pure, bribery would not be altogether approved of; and yet he was tacitly coming round to the understanding that packets would be required, for what purpose both he and Mr Donne were to be supposed to remain ignorant. But it would be very awkward, so near to the time, if he were to be clearly convinced that bribery, however disguised by names and words, was in plain terms a sin. And yet he knew Mr Benson had once or twice convinced him against his will of certain things, which he had thenceforward found it impossible to do, without such great uneasiness of mind, that he had left off doing them, which was sadly against his interest. And if Mr Donne, whom he had intended to take with him to chapel, as fair dissenting prey, should also become convinced, why, the Cranworths would win the day, and he should be the laughing stock of Eccleston. No, in this one case bribery must be allowed, was allowable; but it was a great pity human nature was so corrupt, and if his member succeeded, he would double his subscription to the schools, in order that the next generation might be taught better. There were various other reasons which strengthened Mr Bradshaw in the bright idea of going down to Abermouth for the Sunday; some connected with the out of door politics, and some with the domestic. For instance, it had been the plan of the house to have a cold dinner on the Sunday. Mr Bradshaw had piqued himself on this strictness, and yet he had an instinctive feeling that Mr Donne was not quite the man to partake of cold meat for conscience' sake with cheerful indifference to his fare. Mr Donne had, in fact, taken the Bradshaw household a little by surprise. Before he came, Mr Bradshaw had pleased himself with thinking that more unlikely things had happened than the espousal of his daughter with the member of a small borough. But this pretty airy bubble burst as soon as he saw Mr Donne, and its very existence was forgotten in less than half an hour, when he felt the quiet but incontestable difference of rank and standard that there was, in every respect, between his guest and his own family. It was not through any circumstance so palpable, and possibly accidental, as the bringing down a servant, whom Mr Donne seemed to consider as much a matter of course as a carpet bag, though the smart gentleman's arrival fluttered the Volscians in Caroli considerably more than his gentle-spoken master's. It was nothing like this. It was something indescribable, a quiet being at ease, and expecting every one else to be so; an attention to women which was so habitual as to be unconsciously exercised to those subordinate persons in Mr Bradshaw's family; a happy choice of simple and expressive words, some of which, it must be confessed, were slang, but fashionable slang, and that makes all the difference; a measured, graceful way of utterance, with a style of pronunciation quite different to that of Eccleston. All these put together make but a part of the indescribable whole which unconsciously affected Mr Bradshaw, and established Mr Donne in his estimation as a creature quite different to any he had seen before, and as most unfit to mate with Jemima. Mr Hickson, who had appeared as a model of gentlemanly ease before Mr Donne's arrival, now became vulgar and coarse in Mr Bradshaw's eyes; and yet such was the charm of that languid, high-bred manner, that Mr Bradshaw "cottoned," as he expressed it to Mr Farquhar, to his new candidate at once. He was only afraid lest Mr Donne was too indifferent to all things under the sun to care whether he gained or lost the election; but he was reassured after the first conversation they had together on the subject. Mr Donne's eye lightened with an eagerness that was almost fierce, though his tones were as musical and nearly as slow as ever. When Mr Bradshaw alluded distantly to probable expenses and packets, Mr Donne replied, "Oh, of course, disagreeable necessity. Better speak as little about such things as possible. Other people can be found to arrange all the dirty work. Neither you nor I would like to soil our fingers by it, I am sure. £4,000 are in Mr Pilson's hands, and I shall never inquire what becomes of them. They may very probably be absorbed in the law expenses, you know. I shall let it be clearly understood from the hustings that I most decidedly disapprove of bribery, and leave the rest to Hickson's management. He is accustomed to these sort of things. I am not." Mr Bradshaw was rather perplexed by this want of bustling energy on the part of the new candidate; and if it had not been for the £4,000 aforesaid, would have doubted whether Mr Donne cared sufficiently for the result of the election. Jemima thought differently. She watched her father's visitor attentively, with something like the curious observation which a naturalist bestows on a new species of animal. "Do you know what Mr Donne reminds me of, mamma?" said she, one day, as the two sat at work, while the gentlemen were absent canvassing. "No, he is not like anybody I ever saw. He quite frightens me, by being so ready to open the door for me if I am going out of the room, and by giving me a chair when I come in. I never saw any one like him. Who is it, Jemima?" "Not any person, not any human being, mamma," said Jemima, half smiling. "Do you remember our stopping at Wakefield once, on our way to Scarborough? And there were horse races going on somewhere, and some of the racers were in the stables at the inn where we dined?" "Yes, I remember it. But what about that?" "Why, Richard, somehow, knew one of the jockeys, and as we were coming in from our ramble throughout the town, this man, or boy, asked us to look at one of the racers he had the charge of." "Well, my dear?"